de gobierno a la protección de Tijuana si es necesario.
Confirmaron que el arresto ocurrió tras una persecución. El detenido es presunto lugarteniente de Alexander Sánchez, el ruso.
Violence and chaos overnight in Baja California. The cities of Tijuana, Mexicali, Rosarito, Ensenada, and Tecate all hit in an apparent coordinated attack. Here's according to our media partners at Televisa. At least 24 vehicles were set on fire in the span of around 8 hours. That includes everything
for American tourists who are just trying to head home.
Vehicles were set on fire Friday night and roads were blocked off in what is suspected to be a coordinated act of organized crime by cartels. The violence broke out as American tourists and Mexican locals were attending a beach festival in Rosarito. The attacks prompted a warning from the U.S. consulate telling government employees to shelter in place
donde la
and
violencia del
Americans.
crimen organizado se desató en Ensenada, Tijuana y Mexicali. Ahí reportan la quema de unidades de transporte público
In Spanish.
en donde
From what it appears in the video, there are multiple captors, including at least 2 gunmen, so these men are outnumbered, outgunned, and restrained. Now obviously I don't speak Spanish.
Destinations in Mexico. United States State Department they have nationwide truck kidnappings.
Well, the warning comes as several states in Mexico suffer from a wave of violence carried out by drug cartels. Sandra Mitchell joins us
U.S.
live.
issuing travel advisories for Mexico. And of course, as we're hitting peak spring break season right now, advising Americans not to travel to the areas there. News Asia's Mark Martin joins us live. Mark, the State Department is citing crime and
Hello everyone, thank you and welcome to my channel. If you're here for the first time, my name is Victor Sanchez. I've been making videos about Mexico, mostly about building in Mexico, and some other travel videos and sometimes some one-off videos like this one. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. Thank you for joining. And if you're here for the second or third time, if you're a subscriber, thank you so much. Hopefully this video also helps you reflect the thought process that I have when I am actually trying to encourage people to move to Mexico, to build in Mexico, to retire in Mexico, and so forth. So today's topic, as you can see in the intro, it's about Mexico's violence and Mexico's safety, or what's portrayed to be as Mexico being unsafe. So I asked the question, is this Mexico? Because I always, I'm trying to start my intros saying this is Mexico, and show you a picture of what Mexico is. And then in this case I turned it around where I asked the question, is this Mexico? And the answer is basically yes and no. Yes, because it's part of Mexico, but it's not really what Mexico is. And that's what I'm trying to actually share with you guys. Maybe I can't really physically picture every nook and cranny about Mexico. And even if I tried to put in the video, it's most likely that I would show you beautiful pictures of stuff like that, which you probably already know. And if you want to see those pretty pictures and videos, you can look back at my channel and see some of those. You can see a bunch of other channels portraying Mexico. But right here, what I'm trying to talk about is try to draw a comparison of thought processes and about why Mexico is, in my opinion, not as unsafe and violent as it's portrayed by the media, specifically through the United States. So, first, and I should say that I can't come to you guys and say that I'm going to share with you guys my unbiased point of view, because that wouldn't be true. I am biased because there's several reasons why I'm biased. First of all, I'm Mexican, so I'm going to give you my point of view as a Mexican. And if you're Caucasian or black, you're going to understand that, because you're going to be like, well, he's Mexican. He can go to Mexico and you can speak the language and feel comfortable. Okay, it's true. Second, I'm a Christian. And as a Christian, I'm going to have a different point of view if you're not a Christian. And if for some reason this point of the conversation bothers you, I apologize. I just pray that you would just stick around and listen to what I got to say and see if it benefits you. And third, is that my upbringing, or my experiences in life, that brings me to the point to see how Mexico is one way and the United States is another. And if you haven't lived both, it's going to be difficult, because if you've only lived one and you're only from the outside looking in, it's difficult to understand what's on the other side, unless you've been on the other side to be able to experience it yourself and say it for yourself, not what media has told you, and say, this is what's Mexico. So in business, there's an analogy that one of my managers, when I was first starting up, explained to me that when you're in a situation at work, you can't see what situation you're in until you step out. Okay, and then you can look in and say, oh, this was the issue all along. And he used an analogy of a frog boiling in water. And he said, do you know, he told me, you know that if you place a frog in a pot with water and you turn it up slowly and the water starts to boil slowly, that the frog will not jump out, it will essentially just boil to death? And did you know that if you take a pot of hot water and you take the same frog and throw it in there, it jumps out right away? He goes, that's the situation you're in, when he was trying to tell me about work. Okay. And I want to use this analogy to describe what's going on in the United States and what's in Mexico. So I want you guys to picture for a minute that in the United States, we are that hot pot of water, that frog inside that water just boiling little by little. And we're looking out. And we're looking out and saying, that pot over there is hot. The violence over there is hot. I'm not jumping in. But we are already in hot water, boiling to death. I mean, the United States has always had the issue of always have this thing where it's easier to criminalize other nations. It's easier to criminalize in trying to cover up what's really going on inside the United States, what's really brewing in the United States. It's easier to criminalize Mexico, and it's a shame, because Mexico is their best ally, it's their best friend. They can say Canada, but in reality, the best trade partners that they have, well, it's actually Canada and the United States. So they're both their best friends in that sense, but the one that they hit most is Mexico. And they hit him hard because of the cartels and the killing that has to do with the cartels and all now these fires and stuff like that. But did you guys know that the reason why this all sparked is because if you guys know, there was a visit between Mexico and the United States. The president of Mexico came to the United States. They had a union. They want to increase trade, and there's going to be this train that goes from somewhere in the western middle of Mexico, that goes all the way up to the northern parts of Mexico, into Texas, all the way up to Canada. There's a train that's going to go there. And then there's another trade route that's going to be in the middle of Mexico. So the United States says, you know what, we can't do business until you reduce the crime. And the president of Mexico was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to cause issues with all this stuff. He had his philosophies. However, United States pushed its power and forced Mexico to act on it. And so when all this started, when Mexico started acting, the cartels rebelled, hence the fires that you saw in the first video. And then the United States turns around and points a finger at Mexico and saying that it's unsafe. That's just insane. United States tells them to do something, Mexico does something, and then United States points the finger at them. That's just horrible. It's just bad friendship. It's like, how can a trade partner like this treat Mexico like that? But you know what? The problem also that lies is that there is a lot of issues in Mexico, but there's a lot of issues in the United States that we don't talk about. For example, why are there cartels? Why is there existence? And that's because there's a need, there's a market for it. Who has that market? United States, the #1 consumer of all drugs. So, you take a poor nation with a need, people with a need, and a nation with the need of drugs. What do you think is going to happen? So, we talk about all the kidnapping in the United States. But we don't talk about is who's the consumer of the kidnappings. Anywhere from sex trafficking to organ trafficking. Who's the #1 consumer? The United States. So it's happening in all Latin America where there's poor, there's people that don't have defense, that are poor, that are needed, that are traveling over here because there's a need to come to the United States. And all this thing is happening, but the consumers are the United States. The boiling water, the frog in the boiling water is us here in the United States. We're dying. So I was telling you guys that I was going to share a biased thought process of this. And part of it's my Christianity. Did you guys know that in the last few years, the percentage of people who they consider them Christians have been declining, year after year after the year, in the United States. The United States used to be known as a Christian community, mostly Christian. But slowly, it's been declining. The more it declines, the more crime it goes up. And people, if you're not a believer, you're going to be saying, well, that's kind of absurd, this is what's going to happen. But as a believer, as a Christian, you see that trend happening. The less morality happens, the more crime happens. The less fear of God, there's nothing to stop them. So it's the obvious trade-off is that if you think of yourself as the only viable good person and there is no other higher being than yourself, then you're always going to do what's good in your eyes, and the United States has gone in that direction year after year. And then you got my upbringing. As a Hispanic, you live through these kind of things, at least where I did, I lived through the 91, 92 riots. I know what violence can be around here, and I drove right through it. And thank God that, I'm Mexican, so I got a free ride and nothing happened to me. But God forbid if I was white, I would get beaten to death. What about this whole Black Lives Matters? And I get it, guys. I understand the gist of it, why Black Lives Matters exist. However, I just don't agree with the methods of violence in breaking into things. And we all have lived this just recently in the United States. And we can call it, hey, that's justice, and it's justice, and this is what has to happen. But you don't trade violence for violence. It's just not the way it works. So I grew up in violent areas. I grew up with family that was gang members. I grew up with gang family that are no longer with us because of gang violence. So Hispanic, you're thinking, I'm not as worried about it because you could be driving somewhere and something can happen to you. I get pulled over probably because I look Mexican, and then no other reason because they didn't really explain. On the flip side, the only person who's ever pointed a gun at my head, or not my head, I'm so sorry, I'm exaggerating, pointed at me was a black guy. So I'm not just trying to say that white people or black people, I'm just saying there's so much tension in the United States, racial tension, drug, families, all that stuff in the United States is decaying. And so when we look at Mexico statistically, the moral values are a lot higher in Mexico than the United States. There's a lot more respect to elderly. There's a lot more love to family. In the United States, that's just been going down the drain. Prices have gone up. People can barely afford where they live. And so when you look at those things and you see how rushed everybody is in the United States, especially in California, my goodness, it's like rush. Everywhere you go, it's just rush. And with so much tension that you live under stress. When you go to Mexico, you just cool down a lot. You settle in. Your mentality is settled in. Everything goes just down a notch. So obviously being a Mexican is going to have that bias in me. My Christianity is going to create that bias in me. But my upbringing and obviously if you're white folks, and I don't mean that to offend you, is that to most white folks, you're not going to ever have that worry about being pulled over because of your color, you know, or being discriminated because of your color. Most of the cases, that's not the case. You understand? So yes, as a white folk, you're going to be like saying, hey, I don't know if I want to go to Mexico. You know, but the sad thing is that this is even happening with our Mexican people. The media is so high, is that even Mexicans are worried about going to Mexico. And if you're Mexican and you're watching this, I'm telling you, don't believe the media. Go yourself and try it out. Go visit your people. Get in touch with your people again. Bring back those values that you once had, because even as Mexicans, we're becoming a different type of society, and it's not good. I lived in Mexico to understand those times, and I live here and understand those 2 times. So I'm saying that of experience, and that's why I always recommend Mexico for retirement. Obviously the cost of living, just the peace of mind in general. And have you guys watched the politics lately? My goodness. For people who say they were not going to cause division, causing divisions. They talk about Mexican government being corrupt. I think this government is just as corrupt. They just hide it a little better. Don't you guys? So, thank you guys for watching. Stick around for the rest of the clip. God bless you guys.
Investigation, including new details about the gunman and the safe security measures in the Uvalde School District. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, is outside the gunman's home. Good morning, Matt.
And 3 others are hurt, including a Lakewood police agent after a shooting at the crime school that started in Denver. First in Broadway about 5 p.m. 3 people shot.
Again, with Detroit's chief of police speaking out after a violent night of gun violence in the city of Detroit. 13 people shot over the span of just 7 hours.
President Biden is heading there to meet with the families of victims as officials release new details about the lives lost. And this morning we're getting an exclusive look at the moment the shooter was arrested and the warning signs that were missed.
Victim, a young man that was killed. They said he's just 20 years old and that he was hanging out at a lounge for that party. The lounge here behind me in the Highland Square Shopping Center.
Unfortunately, that's not totally a common call for us to have.
But nothing about this time in San Bernardino, California will be routine.
I got a story CBS 2 broke less than 24 hours ago. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pat Harvey. Within hours of our story airing, the police department we haven't seen in decades. Already this year, at least 143 people have been murdered. Hundreds more have been shot. Our investigative reporter Eric Leonard's been tracking this alarming trend and what's behind it.
Dozens of shots fired by 3 gunmen during a drive-by shooting in South LA, recorded on security and front door cameras.
From Hollywood to Venice Beach, scenes from what could be a disaster movie. Now a seemingly permanent fixture on the streets of Los Angeles.
If you're not shocked by what you see, then I don't know what you would be shocked by.
Across the Bay Area, despite hundreds of millions of dollars spent during the pandemic to help the problem, the homeless population is growing. The data is out.
The pedestrian has a right of way.
And so did Jesus Christ have his way and crucified him. So don't tell me who has the right and who has the wrong.
You almost hit me with the car.
Thank you, Christo.
You should be a better example.
Thank you, son.
You almost hit me with the car. You want to go to jail?
Jail?
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the cemetery? Where do you want to go?
There's other pieces of land around here that we're going to try to get, but so we're fighting with Caltrans and a couple of other agencies and stuff to secure land and then develop our intent, just map out the map and stuff.
For a day.
It doesn't just take a little piece of you, it takes all of you and everything good in your life.
Methamphetamine, the most addictive illegal drug in America.
LAPD has just told me that they have ordered all police helicopters and all LAPD cruisers out of this area. Okay, this is it. Terrible.